Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be, surprisingly, about King's Rising by C.S. Pacat. And yeah, I finished the series immediately. I said it in the last review. No surprise here. I read this book immediately on finishing Prince Gambit. And mainly just because I had to, and the book was in my apartment. So this is the last of the Captive Prince trilogy, so as I do every time I review sequels, I will warn you, there may/will be spoilers for the rest of the series in this review. I try my best not to drop spoilers for the book I'm actually discussing, or at least give warnings if I'm going to drop spoilers, but if you haven't read Captive Prince and Princess Gambit yet, go read them and come back. Or be like me and watch reviews for books you have no intention of ever reading. You do you, I don't care. But this book picks up immediately after the end of the last one. We open with Daemon having just been openly revealed to be the Prince of Aklios, in front of an army of Aklians and Varetian's troops that Prince Laurent left with Daemon in charge of the fort at Ravenel. This is, of course, great for the Aklians, discovering that their favored crown prince is alive and well and ready to fight for the throne. But the Vare troops are, of course, less than happy about this. Still determined to keep his promise to help Laurent and take back his own kingdom from his usurper brother, Daemon is going to have to convince the Aklians and the Varetians to fight together. Making things even worse, an ambush keeps Laurent from bringing his troops to back up Daemon's on the field at Charcy, fighting the regent's troops. Daemon is barely able to take the day, and things only get worse when the truth of Daemon's identity is first spoken between him and Laurent. Now there is no shield against the deep hatred sparked by the fact that Daemon killed Laurent's brother, and Laurent had Daemon almost whipped to death. They are going to have to convince their people to trust each other, while their relationship is at the most volatile. When word reaches them that Laurent's uncle, the regent of Vare, is in the capital of Aklios, they set off to take back Daemon's country, fighting on the field, in the hearts of their people, and in private chambers to build an alliance for their nations and themselves. Okay, and yeah, I mostly absolutely loved this book. It was exactly the ending to the series I wanted, except for one big thing. Of all the books I have ever loved, this was the one that wanted an epilogue the most. There was no falling action. Trying to avoid spoilers here, but we get the final fight and then a page and a half with one character still bleeding, a battle and maybe even a war still happening around them, a kiss, and a let's see if we can meet in the middle. And I'm like, excuse me? Are you kidding me? Are they going to get married? Is that a possibility in this world? This odd sort of queer norm, but not with heavy limits kind of society? Is there going to be one kingdom with two kings? Two kingdoms with two kings? Or three kingdoms that are somehow aligned? Is slavery in Aklios going to be ended? And if so, how are they going to go about that? What is the court under Laurent going to look like? Are the boys going to end up together part of the year, all of the year, just at random? Has Nicandros come around to their relationship? What about Jord? Is their relationship going to be openly acknowledged, secret, semi-secret? Are they going to have the political marriages to women? Or we know how Laurent feels about heirs by the end of this book, but what about Daemon? It's not even 100% clear that they will definitely have control of their kingdoms at the end of this book. And I was like, what? This cannot end here. This has been the only time in my life I finished a book, read the acknowledgements, did the whole rubbing pages together thing to see if maybe, like, there was a page stuck together, maybe there was a secret epilogue after the acknowledgements, and finally just stopped and Googled King's Rising epilogue, question mark? And I found two fan fictions, and then finally found what was labeled as Captive Prince Trilogy Book 3.5. Its name is The Summer Palace, and it's a collection of 4 short stories. One is basically giving us some of the background and POV of Jord, which was enjoyable, though I was going, bitch, I need to know how the main story ends first. The second was, 100% what I would have expected from a true epilogue, but with a bit more page count devoted to spice. The third was a cute little story from after the book's time period that answers a couple of questions about how the lovers were going to rule their kingdoms. And the last was a story of another minor character from book 1, which I did also feel suddenly ended way too abruptly, leaving way too much unanswered. And yes, if you can't tell, I bought the ebook immediately because I was like, oh my god, the epilogue is in the ebook. I need to know what happens. I am not going to wait a week or more for that book to arrive for me to actually know how this series ends. And that is a problem to me. Like, because you should not need to have to buy a second book to get the epilogue of the book you're reading. But, it really is an epilogue. That second story in the short story collection is just the epilogue of this book. And I have no idea why it's not in this book. Especially considering these came out, as far as I know, before the bookish community online started to have their whole, oh, nobody reads epilogues, don't include epilogues, BS discourse. Maybe it's a page count thing. Maybe it was that the third book did come out without an epilogue and the author got enough pushback against the lack of actual falling action that she wrote a specific epilogue to correct the mistake and it just never got formally attached. But it just needs to be in King's Rising. Now, the other 3 short stories were the kind of additions to a series that, yeah, if I get to the end of a series and I'm still attached to it, not ready to let go, I'm willing to go out and buy those short stories and enjoy them. But I see why they are packaged together because none of them really stand alone. But other than that lack of epilogue, I really love this book. It's got a lot of really big emotions, and it had one of those falling off a cliff kind of entrances to the climaxes that are not always my favorite way of getting into a climax. But it was the kind of ripping your soul out big emotions that are beautifully cathartic in a book. Now, I did make a huge mistake by stopping reading when we got the reveal that started the climax. Like that moment that we fell off a cliff, I just put the book down because I needed to be asleep at that moment. And that is a terrible place to put a book down, and even worse for me, because I've spoken before in reviews about how I actively don't enjoy that moment in books when it looks like everything's coming together and then everything explodes, falls apart, everything you thought you knew about the characters is wrong and the characters are about to get dragged across the hot coals. I don't like that moment. And usually the only way I get through it is by forcing myself to keep reading, and I didn't do that on this one. But I will say this big reversal was telegraphed enough that it wasn't too bad of a gut punch for me to pick the book back up. Like, I did happily pick it back up the next night and read on through. I wasn't taken off guard, and that really does help me. But overall, I think the giant, painful emotions are handled really well in this book. We get both characters in wildly painful situations, physically painful and emotionally painful. And I love the way we see them striking out, hurting themselves in their desperate attempt to keep a distance, a distance that is actively hurting them. And the complex emotions of them dealing with the way they have hurt each other was gorgeous. I loved the way we can see the trauma in their every action. And the moment they spar with each other was one of my favorite fight scenes I have ever read in any book. Both because it is a beautifully written fight scene, like just the choreography is good, but also it is an absolutely spectacular display of these bottled up emotions, ripping them apart in a fully physical form. And on that note, it's not the only action scene in this book that is doing some utterly spectacular heavy lifting. The wrestling scene that is not sexual, but is so clearly sexual. The battle at Charcy where Damon is becoming himself. And yes, the sex scene where they realize that they are both the people they were pretending to be all along. It's all wonderfully done. And I love the fact that the book did not feel the need to spell most of it out, just leaning on action to show us what they are going through. This is the perfect bits of showing versus telling, and it uses it in the right places. It's the big emotions that would be hard to encapsulate in words that you just need to feel out. Those are the moments that we are shown physical action to show how these characters are feeling. Now, on the other side of that, I will say the Acton scene, Octon probably. The Octon scene was the one action scene where that sort of backfired for me because it was all way too perfect. The mirroring was almost too ridiculous. Like, it is one of the many scenes that's playing into one of the main themes here, which is the exchange of power between the two main characters. The balance between Damon's physical prowess and Laurent's weaponization of intellect. Like, so much of this book is the evening of the scales between these two characters, which I love. It was necessary for the happy ending to feel earned. But that one scene felt like the book was just bashing me on the head and screaming, look at them facing each other as equals. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. You don't have to be that loud about it. And it would have been okay being that aggressive about it, except for the fact that it may ran a really serious risk of making the climax feel too pat, because the climax is objectively doing the same thing in a different way. And to me, the climax did not quite cross the line of being too pat, but I can see how that would cause it to feel too pat for others. Basically, I feel like that one scene made everything too clear. But other than that, I would say one of the main themes of this book is the layering of identities. Damon is, of course, dealing with the shucking off of his disguise as a random Aclean slave to become himself. But of course, we still also know that he was himself even when he was pretending he wasn't. And then he has to deal with how everyone's perception of him and the ways of interacting with him change once he becomes king. But the biggest concern is how Laurent will deal with this new identity. Of course, spoilers, because it's technically a spoiler, but if you have not figured out that it's going to happen, I don't see how anyone made it through Prince's Gambit without getting to this one and not 100% seeing this coming a mile away. But Laurent already knew who Damon was. Obviously. So it was always just both of them pretending. And Laurent has his own complex layered identities. He is the ice-cold prince, the victim of abuse, the mourning brother, the intelligent young man who wants to be loved, the skilled strategist, the moral leader. Just as Damon is the loyal captain, the brilliant fighter, the slave seeking freedom, the betrayed prince, the mourning son, the heir who cares deeply about his people, the man who is used to getting what he wants. And of course, it's all wrapped up in each of their identities. They are all these things at once, but because of their stations in life, they have to keep those parts separate. And the love story part of this love story is them coming to realize the other person is the only person they can truly be their entire selves with. Which is another reason that the short story needed to be in the epilogue. It needed to be in this book because they haven't had time to work through one of the big final reveals of the final aspect of Laurent's personality or identity at the end of this book. But that's me backtracking. Overall, I loved the way the theme of layered identities is both in your face, directly stated at times, and just flashes of it show up in other places. I love it when a book manages to balance that, fuck it, I'm directly telling you what the book is about, and trusting readers to feel it out. That is a good balance. And I do love the way clothing is used to illustrate this theme. And in a way, it's very, very obvious. Like, the use of Laurent always being wrapped up in so many layers of tightly laced, armor-like clothing that has to be peeled away step by step. And Damon is almost always either wearing full-on armor or loose-fitting draped garments that can come off with, like, one gesture. And the moment that the characters wear the other culture's clothing and how that affects who they present as and how honest they are with each other, that was really well done. And it was just subtle enough to not feel like the author was bashing us on the head going, look at what I'm doing with the clothing, while also being 100% clear. Overall, I very much enjoyed this book and this entire series. I feel like, yeah, the lack of epilogue was a serious flaw, but if you go into this book knowing that the epilogue is just basically a princess in another castle and get it ahead of time, I feel like it is a solid ending. You just need that epilogue to make it one. I loved these characters, loved the way they balanced each other, loved the complex world building with some serious dark shit mixed into a world that does feel fixable. I also love how the dark shit is taken very seriously. Like, it's not hand-waved away that the Regent is, you know, a pedophile. That is seen as an atrocious thing. And we see the actual damage he has done to all these people. I love the complexity of this world. It was quick-paced, with just enough playfulness to balance out the serious shit. Overall, I really enjoyed this series. Just make sure you get the book 3.5. Otherwise, it's not done.